Hello, friends. This is the Alphalist podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the Alphalist podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for their company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply. Welcome to the Alphalist podcast. I am your host, Toby, and today with me is Gertrud. And Gertrud is working for a company that I guess not so many people know from its name. It's called Eyeo, and it's actually the company behind the most popular or one of the most popular Chrome extensions in the world, which is adblock+. Many people actually don't know that they have it installed. I often confront people do you know adblock? I have to tell them that it's the red hand that actually stops ads from being served. Gertrud, very happy to have you on the podcast here. Maybe we start with a little introduction for yourself, as I'm very bad with that. Where do you come from? What do you do? What's your passion?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me, Toby. I'm really happy to be here in your Alphalist podcast. And a little correction, the users out there might even know not only the extension adblock+, but also adblock. So we run both extensions and they are quite popular, both of them. So a few words about me. Yes, I'm Gertrud. I'm the CTPO working at Eyeo. And how to introduce myself. I would like perhaps to give you a short overview, not about my career stations and my title and where I studied what and what I did, but perhaps a bit about, I would call it my journey, how I become this, what I'm at the moment, the CTPO at Eyeo. And what is it about to do a kind of, I would call it tech and product management. So I would separate this in three areas. Let's start with engineering itself. So for me, that was just a jump into the cold water when I was young. Yeah, I was interested. Of course, I also checked out the Commodore 64 from my father. I was interested in math and a lot of other stuff, playing theater, art, reading books. And then after school, I didn't know exactly what to do. And my brother, he told me, hey, why aren't you studying computer science? And I said, what? Are you crazy? But then he told me a bit about this, I would call it discipline. And I got really curious and interested. And then I started to study computer science and had a kind of deep dive into engineering. And this is a really... an interesting world, to cover the complex reality, telling a machine what to do, understanding the needs, the problems, and then building something which is used by users. And this interesting thing that you have this mixture of structural thinking and also this portion of creativity. This is absolutely fascinating for me. How to define data structures, how to define clear architectures. So the whole area around engineering is really an interesting area. So I studied computer science, and then also I worked as an engineer for quite a time, Java development in the retail area. And then in this time, I worked a lot about this topic, requirements engineering. This was the time when Agile arises at the horizon in Germany. And before that, we all wrote these documents, this waterfall specifications with all the requirements.
Lastenheft and Pflichtenheft.
Lastenheft and Pflichtenheft, absolutely, in the neutral language. And then the engineers have to understand what are the needs of the customer. And in this time, I gave birth to my second children, and I took my maternity leave. Also, take this time to get a deeper dive into this topic, requirements engineering, how important it is to really understand the needs, the problems, and how you work also with the natural language. Yeah, that's important to questionate each term, also working with sentence templates. So this was, I would call it a bit predecessor of nowadays we work with user stories. And I was really fascinating. And then I came back after my break, and in this company I worked, I say, hey, look, we have to work different. And I motivated everybody to use these sentence templates and work this way. And I remember that my customer was really a bit angry when he had a look at the specification written in these weird templates. So, and then I changed to become, at that time it was called project manager, but it was a kind of product owner. Yeah, this was the time. Yeah, as I said, everything changed a bit. So then I worked, I would call it in the process around software development. Yeah, product management, requirements engineering. Also then, of course, I worked with the agile processes which came up. So at first it was this engineering itself, then the processes around software development, product management, and agile processes. And then I started at Axel Springer. I started as a project manager, but this is not so important. But after a while, I became a tech manager. And what does this mean? From this perspective, it's also about how you ensure having an organization with teams who are able to really build great software products. And in this time when I started, we did a lot of reorganizations and had new teams and had to mixture teams, and the product strategy changed. In this time, I read a really great book, a kind of, I would say, eye-opener. It's called Team Topologies. And in this book, it started with this deep correlation between technical architecture and organization. And what it says, it's like this Conway's law. I think we all know this, that when you have organizations which builds design systems, then how the system is designed is shaped or fostered by how the organization is built up, how the communication paths in this organization work. And this, I think, is so absolutely interesting. And that's also important to know when you shape with those organizations, you have to understand this paradigm because it has such a huge impact. We can go a bit further. Perhaps you have a question about this, but this is what I would say. Now I'm a tech manager and have this different perspective, working in this engineering itself area, then doing kind of product management, process around software development, and now as a tech and product manager at Eyeo.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how do you design your org structure if you know that your IT architecture follows it? Like, is there did you plan it from scratch, or do you maybe see that this has to be revamped right now, or how do you feel about that?
First of all, it's not. I cannot build it from scratch because I joined Eyeo March last year, and then there was an organization. And the interesting thing at Eyeo is it's not only about Eyeo. We are at the moment a kind of 3 companies, Eyeo, and we have adblock Inc., which built the extensions. what we do, the other products I can talk about later. And we also bought last year a company called Adblockers. So we have different companies, different teams, and now the challenge is to bring this all together. So you don't start from scratch. That's the one point, and the other is the terms architecture and organization. I think they seem so fixed. Yeah, architecture. You always think about a house, and then there is a house, and it's fixed. But this is not the case. Architectures and organizations, from my perspective, are quite fluid. And why is this so? Because when you change your product strategy, and you do this because, I don't know, you grow, you build new products, the world change outside, then you have to adapt your technical architecture, I don't know, being more scalable or whatsoever. And then, of course, this affects also your organization. So from my perspective, it's a kind of ongoing thing. Adapt your architecture, adapt the organization. But of course, you have to keep in mind that this costs a lot of energy. Yeah. So changing an organization, we are talking about people. We are talking about, we all want to have highly motivated, autonomous working teams. We all know, hey, they need their phases, norming, storming, and so ever. And you can't change it the whole time. The same also with technical architecture. You have to adapt it step by step, because continuously you have to make sure that's maintainable, that's robust, yeah, and also flexible for the future. So again, from my perspective, we have this connection between architecture and organization. It's not fixed. You have to adapt this continuously, but you have to take care about the people and also about that your software is still maintainable. And when it comes back to your question, let's talk about one example at Eyeo. So again, we have different companies. At the moment, it's not important what they do. Especially, we can talk about this later. But of course, when you have different companies, let's assume, I don't know, you have we have, for example, at Eyeo one data team. And of course, then you think, hey, it does make sense to have one data platform also for the other companies. Why do redundant work? Yeah, this is obvious. Everybody, yeah, and then we are then we are thinking about the so-called platform teams. I think this is also a term which is quite popular at the moment, and it's really interesting that you have one central product or platform which is used internally by, for example, the application or product teams. That with that you can reduce the so-called cognitive load for the application teams, because then they don't have to do everything in parallel. And of course, it's easier to use a platform than doing all the stuff yourself. So the platform topic is quite important, not only in the sense of data, but also, for example, infrastructure. At Eyeo, we used to really maintain our servers ourselves in our data centers. And as I said, as we want to be more able to become more scalable, we are now working much more with cloud services, for example, using managed services, and do a kind of upskilling now in all the teams. So this is and how the organizational setup overall at Eyeo is. I think we all face this challenge that we have to concentrate. We all know how important it is to work in an interdisciplinary way. Yeah, I don't know. You have a business area, and it's important that you work closely together: product, engineering, business. Yeah. But on the other side, you also have this kind of challenge that it's important that the disciplines, tech, product, and sales, also work closely together cross team, because I don't know, engineering, it does make sense to have a kind of tech radar to check out what technologies are using overall. It's a kind of zoo or not. It does make sense to have a knowledge exchange. And at Eyeo at the moment, we work in so-called business units with all the disciplines inside. but we also work when it comes to the disciplines, product engineering and sales also closely together, so that we have a kind of metrics organization.
Okay. And that like if we take the different companies, then the matrix is spread across all those companies that you acquired as well, or how does that work? And is it like a dedicated tech team for, let's say, adblock?
This is a great question. This is the challenge we're facing right now. When you run a company with a product portfolio with different products, and again, let's talk about our products. We not only doing building our extensions. Then you can say, hey, it's of course better to have smaller companies focused on their products and they are faster. Yeah, decision making is faster than having this big organization. Yeah, I worked for years in the corporate at Axel Springer, so I know what I'm talking about. But at Eyeo, this is really a bit special because our products, we talk these interdependencies. We not only have sometimes technical dependencies, we have so-called interdependencies. What does this mean? We have in our products our success KPIs, our success metrics when it is a product successful, but sometimes we have different interests. Why is this so? Because we build products for end users, for users. We do this. We offer this great web experience, having ad filtering web experience. And we also offer products for publishers, and we want to build products for advertisers to make it happen that the advertisers can reach our inventory directly. And with our products, we have sometimes different interests. And that's why we decided, hey, we cannot run this company as a kind of portfolio company with different smaller companies inside. So we are aiming for a metrics organization, and we would like to integrate all the companies into one organization. And we have reasons for this. It's not about that. We are a new management team at Eyeo. My colleagues, Jan and Frank, they are ex-Googlers, and I come from Axel Springer. And of course, sometimes we have...
Which is an interesting setup for like adblock, right?
It is. I
mean, Axel Springer sued adblock at a certain point, and I guess like Google and adblock also weren't always friends. So that's really interesting to see, like just as a side comment.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you can imagine that I got a lot of question about this decision. But of course, we can now talk a bit about what does Eyeo exactly? What are we offering? And of course, I can also tell the story how I came to Eyeo. What was it about? So I worked at Axel Springer for quite a while, for almost 9 years. And it was a really good time. I know that Axel Springer at the moment faces a lot of criticism. And I think many things, went wrong. But I really would like to say, hey, they are working great colleagues. And I had really a good time. I really want to emphasize this also as a woman at Axel Springer. But this is not our topic today. But 9 years is a long time. And I think every 2 years I had a new job. So I had many chances and it was really a good time. But then, after 9 years, I thought, oh goodness, it's time for a change. I need a system change. I don't want to work in a corporate anymore. I really need something different. And then, coincidence, a headhunter reached out and asked for this job for Eyeo. And then I got curious. Oh, interesting that they asked me. And then, of course, I read a lot about Eyeo. And then I talked to Till and Jutta, so the founders. And I must say these interviews were absolutely interesting. So great people overall, really great conversations. And I also like the idea itself. So we are aiming, of course, we can discuss the business model, but the idea, thinking about, hey, what is the web about? We want to have an open, accessible, balanced web. And we see, hey, advertising is the biggest monetization pillar in this area. And we see also what are the consequences for this. And having this idea of ad filtering, and again, I really would like to explain what it is, to keep the balance, to make the user happy, seeing only not so many annoying ads, but also rewarding the publisher. From my point of view, this was an interesting idea, and also working at a company who thinks about this. Hey, how does the web work? What are the powers in the system? This was so interesting for me that I said, okay, let's go ahead. So it was this whole purpose thing, the people, and of course the situation in which I was at the moment. Yeah, this growth phase, this challenging growth phase. The processes don't work, and we do reorganization, all the hard stuff. But these situations, I really like, and I find them very interesting. And I had to have a really good time at Eyeo.
Okay, yeah, good to hear. But maybe back to your complex matrix organization before we talk more about Eyeo. How does it work? I mean, if you acquire a company, do you then like fully integrate people into your organization, make them part of? Is there one big engineering team which then is being used by the matrix? Like, does that really work?
Yes, this is the idea. But at the moment, we are starting to think about how we really want to set up the organization. What we already thought about is really, we want to have a huge engineering group, of course, again, with dedicated teams and dedicated departments, but having them all under one umbrella, this is what we are aiming for. Again, because of these interdependencies. Also, when I started at Eyeo, there was such a silo thinking overall, and we broke this up last year, especially when it comes to the product organization. But we really want to go a step further and have one organization overall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there's no sub-team for one product or the other product in the engineering team.
It's really... No. Of course, no. Sorry.
Okay. No. I thought it's like all people working on everything. Okay.
No, we will still work in these kind of business units, and we still have dedicated product teams. But at the moment, we have different company structures.
Okay. So essentially, you clean up the org chart and make it more explicit, I guess.
Explicit,
maybe implicit before, I can imagine. Okay. And then you also mentioned the platform teams and the platform. Do you build like one real tech platform for all the businesses you've acquired, or is there like let's say a minimum feasible ground for all the acquisitions and the different subsidiaries, or like how do you see like the platform? Is it more about communication tools or and best practices, or where does it start, where does it end?
So when I talk about platform, let's talk about, for example, the data or also our infrastructure team. When I talk in this context about platform, first of all, it's important that these platform teams have also a product manager who talks with the application and product teams. Hey, what are your needs? What do you need? And with this, build a kind of self-service platform that they can be used by the product teams to make their life easier. And it's not the case, hey, I have a data platform, my central warehouse, you have to use this. It's more than, hey, it's really, I would say it's very service oriented, customer. Hey, I have customers. These are my internal teams. And then I build, because you have often the situation that these teams have really the same requirements, the same needs. And therefore you can build a platform, a standardized platform, not that you end up in building individual stuff, because then you are not scalable. So the idea is understanding the needs from the product teams, building a platform which can be used by them perfectly as a self-service platform. and then reducing their cognitive load. And you run this kind of standard platform and helping the product teams. And you can do this, I don't know, with managed infrastructure service or data or whatsoever. But this is the idea behind a platform when I talk about an internal platform.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So example could be, let's say you have BI and you want to have a data warehouse and provide that to your customers internally. Then it could be that you end up using, I don't know, Metabase hosted somewhere with like the SQL servers of your different entities and or like an ETL process or ELT process.
Exactly.
That kind of gets it into that, and you figure that out together in a way. Like you have like the stakeholders, maybe the leadership team of the individual companies, then, and they can influence the decision. What if I join this as like an organization that has recently been acquired? Am I required to use it? Is it optional? Is there like how do you see that?
I personally
like some
would always
minimum
always go
ground?
for this is optional. For me, the platform has to be so good that the new teams understand, okay, this helps us. Because otherwise you say, hey, look, you have to use it. And then also the platform team has a lot of pressure. And then sometimes the product teams has to wait until the platform team is ready. Of course, you have in the setup sometimes redundant stuff. Let's assume we buy a new company and they have already their data system. Of course, then we have to really elaborate and talk about, does it make sense to integrate them on this platform? It's not on the slide. It looks always so easy. Hey, cool. We have a platform, integrate and blah. And then we have our synergies. But this is, you really have to be a bit careful that you meet the needs. But of course, you can offer this. Hey, look, this is a platform. This is quite useful. It's easy to use. This is really important. It's easy to use for you. It helps you reduce your cognitive load. You can use it. Go for it. This is the idea, and not, hey, I want to centralize everything. You have to do it. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, with some things, like it might be helpful to have like a middle ground that everyone, I don't know, agrees to, right? I mean, let's take. I think like everything starts with communication. So, do we use Slack? Do we use email? Do we, I don't know, use Teams?
Yeah, this is a different story. You're absolutely right. Of course, this is also a challenge we are facing right now. We have this discussion, Slack, MetaMost, and so we took our decision. It's Slack, but of course we have everybody uses his G Suite. And we have different Confluence and Jira stacks. And of course, we are now making a plan to bring this together step by step, because this is really important that we have one really collaboration tools that we So this is absolutely important, but of course it take a while.
I mean, I think like Slack and email and Google Workspace, etc., can go hand in hand. But yeah, then you have the wiki, like one likes to use Notion, the other one likes to use Confluence potentially, or I can imagine then they're like, if you work in a space where privacy is quite important, you mentioned MetaMost, so there are like different opinions on stuff, and I can imagine that this is kind of hard to then find a common or a good middle ground without discouraging anyone, right?
Yeah, this is, to be honest, part of my job. Yeah, there I'm quite clear, because when it comes to collaboration, there it's different. Yeah, it only makes sense when we work in one tool. Otherwise, we will go crazy. And of course, everybody has his favorite tool set, blah, blah, blah. But there I'm, again, now we took our decision towards Slack. And in this situation, what before this, we took some surveys, we asked the people, and also what are the requirements. So now we can explain this decision. And of course, I got complaints about this. And then I say, hey, look, I understand you, but these are the reasons, and we go for it now. Because otherwise we cannot discuss everything. And especially when it comes to collaboration, it's really important that we work with the same tools. I'm absolutely clear.
Okay, understood. And then you kind of like whenever you acquire a company, you kind of integrate that. And then the other services that you add on top, it's kind of optional. And this is what, like you have to convince people then to join this track. And let's stay with that BI example. Are then like the individual units somehow contributing to this platform stack? Because I think like that could also be like part of the magic, that if you yourself contribute to like A, the decisions, obviously, like you're involved, but B, also the whole work that is being done, that this kind of changes acceptance. How do you feel about that?
Toby, this is an interesting idea. To be honest, I haven't thought about this because, again, when I talk about this platform, is this the idea to reduce the cognitive load. But I will think about this when I will face this discussion regarding acceptance. Yeah, at the moment, I think it works quite well, and everybody understands this. But this is, of course, this is an interesting idea.
I think it might be relevant if you go deep really into building tech, which I don't feel that you do it in this platform team, that you necessarily build, I don't know, engineering products that are then used by all of the different entities, but rather do a lot of buy instead of build, right? If you build, I think then it's more important that people contribute to that to the code actually, to accept it, and also to bring it to a maturity level, which is okay, right? That often with like home crafted software, it's hard to get it to a level where like really multiple teams can use it and enjoy using it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But perhaps we can talk a bit what we are building at Eyeo, what we are doing. So what is ad filtering? I think we
right. I mean, what and the difference between ad blocking and ad filtering, I think that's like you explicitly mentioned ad filtering, while the company is called adblock. So it doesn't block but filter.
Yeah.
Which is also part of the business model, as far as I know.
Yeah. but let's start a bit about history. Yeah. So when the internet came up, I would say end of 90s, and we all starting to try something out, and the first browsers appears. Then also we saw the first ads popping up everywhere, the banners, and it got really, I don't know, very colorful, and starts to becoming a bit annoying.
Partly annoying, yeah.
Partly annoying. In these times, I think everybody also was figured out what are the business models in the web, monetization possibilities. And in this time, some engineers just said, oh, it's so annoying. What's that? Yeah, we write blockers. We can block it. From a technical perspective, this is not a big thing. Let's block ads. And this is also, and this is important from my perspective, the base idea of the web being open, accessible for everybody, that you are invited to contribute, to interact, and also that the web is also thought about that you can influence also how you use the web. Yeah, that's why there is the possibility to build extensions. So with this mindset, hey, it's not I surf through the web and I see the ads. It's not cool. It's annoying, and so the web is about, hey, invites you to also to foster how you use the web, how your web experience is. So that's why ad blockers came up and became quite successful over time. And when we talk about blocking, it's not only ads; it's also you can block trackers, you can block different things. So there's also the term content blocking. So this is a bit broader. And how you block, as I said, you can do this via browser extensions, or sometimes it's also integrated in browsers. Let's think about Brave, for example. This is a popular example. They just do it. that's ad blocking and content blocking. So we build the product adblock and adblock plus, the extensions, but we also build so-called our SDKs, where we offer our so-called distribution partners, so browser vendors, with our product a deep technical integration in browsers. So we are not building only the extensions, but also this kind of SDK to have this the integration. And again, because this is I think quite interesting how ad blocking works. It's quite easy. So when a website is loading, you have this piece of software, this blocking software, and this runs on the client, obviously, and then go through the DOM tree and checks the components and try to find matches in the so-called filter lists. So filter lists is the possibility where you can define what you want to be blocked. And then this piece of software checks out, okay, I have a match, and this is then I can block this request. And so you can do ad blocking. This is quite easy. The interesting thing is these filter lists themselves. There are many, many, many filter lists everywhere. So we have, I think, more than 500 filter lists, open source. These are just text files full of regular expressions. And you can write your own filter list. You can write a filter list where you say, I want to block this and that. And then you can integrate this filter list, for example, in our extension. Our extensions come with so-called default filter lists, but you can define your own. It's easy. And also languages is a huge topic. Over 40 languages. So we have filter lists in over 40 languages. The most popular one is the so-called easy list. And the easy list has over 80,000 rules. And we have approximately 400 commits a week and many, many authors. So there is a lot of changes all the time, but you can imagine new websites coming up, new domains for new ad requests, and this we want to block. And also what's interesting, when we block ads, then of course at the end, the website should not look ugly. And that's why there is the possibility via so-called element hiding to let the site at the end look good, also without ads. Mm-hmm. But this with the filter lists becomes also a bit, they are also risky. Why? Because you can imagine you write a filter rule with a filter list, and then you use this filter list to block ads. And of course, you can do a mistake, and then it's broken. And the thing is, you aim for not having so long filter lists. You can write filter rules very specifically, but then they get very long. And then you can also write more general filter rules. Then the filter list is not so long, much easier to maintain, but the risk to break more sites is much higher. So that's why we at Eyeo, we distribute these open source filter lists. And of course, we have to check the quality of the filter lists before we distribute them. This is a big topic for us.
And is that then centrally controlled, or is there it sounds a bit like open source, like there are like many contributors and they maybe maintain the quality as well, or like what do you do centrally? And
we check the quality of the filter lists before we distribute them. And then we reach out. We work closely together with a lot of filter authors. And we tell them, hey, look, perhaps you can change this. Sometimes, of course, we also change filter lists. So we handle these open source filter lists because, of course, this is for us, it's great to have this open source community out there. Yeah, we rely on them. But of course, we check the quality and then we work closely together with them. And then, of course, when you do ad blocking, there's one important term, and this is circumvention. Because the owner of the website, the publishers, of course, sometimes they don't like us because, of course, they cannot monetize the users when we block all ads. And that's why they do circumvention. So it's like this cat and mouse game. Yeah, they do something on top that ads are shown, and we check it, and then we do anti-circumvention because, of course, we want to make sure that the user gets the experience he or she or they want. So that's also important. Hey, having this ad blocking, circumvention, anti-circumvention out there. So this was ad blocking. And now we know, okay, nothing is for free. Yeah, we want to have an open web, accessible, adjustable. But on the other side, the publishers, of course, they need money. Yeah, and that's why there was the idea born years ago, having this kind of acceptable ads standard. What is it? It's that you say, hey, we let ads through, so we don't block all the ads. So ads, the criteria are about placement, distinction, and size. So there are special formats where the acceptable ad standard says, hey, this is okay, not too big, it's not so annoying. Also, how many ads we have on one side is important, and important ads have to be labeled. So you have to understand, okay, this is an ad. Yeah. So these are the criteria. It's not about the content of a creative or an ad itself. This is important. This question I get so often. Yeah. If we also filter good or bad ads, this is not the case. It's only about the experience when it comes to layout stuff. So this is the acceptable ad standard. There's also an acceptable ads committee out there, because this is a kind of neutral standard. And in this committee, there are persons from advertising, publisher, and also users. And they make sure that there is an evaluation of this standard, but it's acceptable for all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. So this is the idea behind the acceptable standard. So, and we do ad filtering. That means we do ad blocking with the filter lists. Every ads are blocked. And then comes our so-called allow listing into a place. And this is a kind of whitelist. I'm not allowed to say it. I mentioned the term whitelist in an all hands, and then I got the question, I don't know, because red, white, and black. So it's allowing ads. So it's also just a filter list, but with the ads where we say, okay, these ads are acceptable when it comes to the acceptable ad standard, and we let these ads through. And now our business model, we talk to the publishers and say, look, and now comes the interesting news. We have at the moment roughly 270 million users. So we have a huge user base. And with this, we can go to the publisher and say, hey, look, be our partner. And then with that, you can also monetize these acceptable ads users. And of course, from this, we get a kind of rev share or a fee. This is the business model behind this. And the idea is, hey, happy user, happy publisher, and of course, also happy Eyeo. Yeah,
interesting.
And when it comes to our extensions, when you download the extension, you become AdBlock Plus user. Then the default constellation is then you are an acceptable ads user. But in this onboarding process, we are very transparent. We explain this to you. Hey, acceptable ads, this is how it works. Here you can opt out. Yeah, but we have an opt-out rate which is not so big. So that's also for us to say, hey, look, this acceptable ad standard is accepted by the user. Yeah, this is of course for us very, very important.
Okay, interesting. And like over 200 million users means that you have like a big reach, which you could also use to make the web a better place, as you're like kind of in the middle, right? You're kind of a mediator. and let's look at the browsers and how they are evolving. Like for a while in Chrome, there's like this scary face on top where it's kind of you have profiles, right? Which is like obviously like the idea to introduce like a profile level where you could also be the gatekeeper for this profile as Google, right? While you could also build something like a privacy sandbox yourself where you have the user and you can say that you're kind of an independent party, which obviously also needs to earn money, but maybe does it in a different way than Google or others, and could control this user level or this privacy level. Is that the future or?
Great question, Toby. Again, so we've talked about users and publishers, but let's also talk about advertisers. Our next idea is that we offer the opportunity to reach this acceptable ads inventory directly from agencies and advertisers. Because we are quite sure that our audience is not so fatigued, so it's not so tired, because you don't see so many ads. We have quite a great audience, tech-affine. So we are absolutely sure this audience is absolutely important for the advertiser side. Mm-hmm. And with that, of course, we are thinking about what if we could collect a kind of behavioral user data from our users, from our extensions, of course, in an anonymous way, and then also think about putting them in these segments or topics. In the privacy sandbox, it's called topics. And with this in place, also to provide, again, for the buy side, for the agencies or advertisers, an opportunity to do a privacy-friendly targeting. Yeah, this is an idea we have at the moment, but we see a huge opportunity in this. It's quite interesting for us because we are in a position to do this. But on the other side, we have to check how a go-to-market strategy can look like and what of kind of business case we see behind this. But this is absolutely a topic we are discussing at the moment very deeply.
Okay. Because I could imagine that, I don't know, if I'm an adblock user and I get asked if I want to, like, I get the question, like, I don't know, L'Oreal wants to engage with you. Is it okay for you? Yes, no, maybe. This is maybe leads to a yes more often than in a standard setup where everyone sees the ads, right? So I could imagine that this actually leads to a good setup for the user, and maybe makes people accept the ads if they are in control. What is really being sent out, right? What is really, like, which part of my data is really then sent to L'Oreal, and that you can limit it somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is also a kind of a piece of our purpose statement, that we give the users the control back. And also in this, when we think about this, having this in place about this product, this does make sense, absolutely. On the other side, when we talk about providing this transparency or control towards the user, there we also have to check how we make this transparent to the user, but on the other side, having still a good user experience. Because with transparency, let's think about the consent layer. Everybody hates them. It's really hard. So when it comes to privacy, I think everybody talks about transparency and giving back the control. Yes, on the one side, but on the other side, it also doesn't make sense to overwhelm the user with all the information. You have to choose I think we also need to discuss about smart ways to ensure this kind of transparency and give the control back. But on the other side, not that we end up in this, oh goodness, again, what's this? Click. Yeah.
Yeah. Ideally, it would be if you could just influence this in retrospect, right? If you've seen an ad and you don't want your data to be passed back, that you could correct that after it unfortunately has been stored, right? But yeah, I can imagine that this is like a big thing. Which role does AI play in this whole setup? I can imagine like detecting ads is obviously like their AI can maybe replace those filter lists in long term. Is that true? Is that what you're working on?
Absolutely. So for a long time, we are working on this topic because, as I said, these filter lists, not easy to maintain. These text files with regular expressions, can't you automate this? Yeah, this is really, and that's why we work really intense on this topic. And it's not, at the moment, we are aiming for having a full automation of ad filtering. What does this mean? So we started to train models to distinguish between ads and no ads to automate this. And we are quite, I would say, on a good path. And what we want to do now is that we collecting and analyzing data and check the model's performance the whole time. And then also check for improvements and then use this data automatically to update the model, to have a better model, and then also have an automated process in place to deploy the model, so that we have continuously a model in place, collecting data, checking the kind of performance or health of the model, retrain the model, and then deploy it to have continuously a great ad filtering experience. We are on our way, but we are not there yet, but we are quite confident. But with this comes some challenges. Again, it sounds so easy, but we faced some challenges. But so it's not only about having this whole process automated. We also, when it comes to anti-circumvention, we see an interesting use case for AI and machine learning. And also, for example, generate filter rules. Can also be an interesting idea. But at the moment, we focus a lot on this automated pipeline to really have a full automated pipeline for ad filtering.
Okay, it sounds amazing, especially like having such a big user base where you could maybe also every once in a while ask a user, like, is that an ad or not? We're not sure. You could even build like a panel of users that help you, right? I mean, apart from the filter list people, obviously.
We have this in place already. We have a so-called issue reporter. We get really feedback from the people, from the users out there. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, yeah. So we are in a very good position to check the health of our model.
Okay, cool. Sounds great. Really like looking forward to see more of that in the future, and really great conversation so far. I still, as we slowly have to come to the end, have a little surprise for you, which I typically have for my guests. No worries. I know your Eyeo's co-founder Tim Schumacher quite well because I also run a company called SaaS Group together with him. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot, and he once told me about an Easter egg that he personally built into AdBlock Plus. I don't know if you ever tried clicking the red hand 35 times in a row, but like he told me that, and it actually opens up an Easter egg feature called the Time Machine, which physically lets you travel back in time. We both know like Tim can be crazy, And it's his invention. Like everyone can use it now. I hope not too many people abuse it. And I have AdBlock Plus open here, and I try it. Like I just clicked 35 times, and now I can enter a year and a character, and I enter Gertrud Kolb and the year 2012, where you just started off as a project manager at Axel Springer. And we can now observe yourself for a while. You kind of fighting for new tech standards, which can be heavy in a publishing house. And we now have the chance to whisper something into young Gertrud's ears. What would it be?
I would say be more self-confident, because in this time it was so interesting at Axel Springer, the whole discussion about how to work online and print and together. And for me, when I started, I was the whole time, I have firstly to understand everything, and then I can raise my opinion. And now I would say, hey, be more self-confident and talk much earlier about your ideas, especially when you are a newbie. Yeah, this is important because this brings fresh ideas into groups. So don't be too shy at the beginning and say, hey, I just have to understand everything and then I can raise ideas. Just talk about them, because then you end up in real interesting discussions and brainstorming sessions, and this is really helpful.
I can imagine. And I like being 8 years at Axel Springer, I can imagine that there's like quite a lot of fights also between print and digital back at that time. And I spent some time at Gruner & Jahr as well, so that was similar, I guess.
Yeah, it was crazy, but absolutely interesting time working there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for your insights into ad blocking and ad filtering and a bit of privacy and also your team architecture and organization architecture. Really interesting. Hope to see it again and maybe catch up on AI at a later stage when your model is live. Have a great weekend.
It's live. It's live.
It's live. It's live, but
we didn't have the time. It's really, but we talk another time, Toby.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks again. See you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Alphalist podcast. If you like this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. Alphalist is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to CTO@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on Alphalist, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.